They sold my late dad's watch, his last memory, to fund my stepsister's failing business. But when the pawn shop owner called me, everything changed. Let me walk you through how it all happened. And if this story means something to you, don't forget to show some love, like share, and maybe hit that subscribe button. My name is Jessica Moore. I'm 26 now. A few months ago, I lost the most important person in my life, my dad. He was a quiet man, a Vietnam veteran, and honestly my best friend. My mom left us when I was just a kid, and after that, it was just him and me. He did everything he could to raise me right, even when things got tough. When I was 17, everything shifted. My dad met a woman named Dana. She was nice enough in the beginning, but something always felt off. She had a daughter, Kaylee, who was just a year older than me. From the outside, it might have looked like a family, but I never felt like part of it. I tried, but they made it clear I was the extra piece. Still, my dad stayed the same with me. He never stopped being my safe place. There was this one thing, his old Omega watch. He wore it every day. He used to tell me it helped him get through the war, reminded him to keep going. When I was 13, he told me, "One day this will be yours, no matter what happened." That promise stayed with me. I didn't care about money or anything else, just that watch. When Dad got sick last year, it all went downhill fast. Cancer. I stayed by his side until the very end. Dana and Kaylee weren't even around much. After the funeral, I thought we might all try to get along. I was wrong. They barely spoke to me. A week later, they asked me to leave the house, my childhood home. They kept everything. I didn't get a single thing from his estate. No money, no furniture, not even a photo. But I knew what I had to do. I went back one day to grab that one thing that mattered, his watch. But when I asked Dana about it, she gave me a fake smile and said, "There's nothing left here for you." I thought she was joking. She wasn't. I looked everywhere, my old room, drawers, shelves. It was gone. When I asked Kaylee, she shrugged and said she didn't remember ever seeing a watch. That moment hit me hard. I couldn't even speak. I left the house feeling hollow, like I'd just lost him all over again. I cried in my car for half an hour before I could even drive. That watch was the only piece of him I had left. And then 2 weeks later, my phone rang. A few weeks after the funeral, I finally worked up the strength to go back to my dad's house. It was strange walking through that front door, knowing he'd never be there again. The place didn't even feel like his anymore. The walls had the same pictures, the same old carpet, but it felt cold, like it had been wiped clean of him. I went straight to my old room. It still had a few boxes of my things, some books, a couple of old school trophies, but none of it mattered. I was there for one thing, his watch. He always kept it in the top drawer of my nightstand, right next to an old leather photo wallet. I opened the drawer. Empty. I checked the others. Nothing. Panic started creeping in. I dug through the closet, the boxes, even under the bed. Still nothing. I walked out into the hallway, heart pounding, and found Dana in the kitchen, drinking coffee like it was any other day. I asked her, "Do you know where Dad's watch is? The Omega?" She didn't even blink, just looked up at me and said, "There's nothing left here for you." I stared at her. What does that mean? She took another sip of her coffee and said, "I don't remember seeing any watch. Maybe your dad got rid of it. Who knows?" I didn't believe her for a second. He never took it off. Even in the hospital, he made me keep it on the nightstand next to him. I turned to Kaylee, who had just come down the stairs. "Did you take it?" She looked surprised, then frowned. "What are you talking about? I don't even remember a watch." Two blank faces. No guilt, no concern, just lies. I didn't know what to say. My chest felt tight. It was like I'd been punched in the stomach. I went back to my room one more time, hoping I missed something, but it was gone. My father's last gift, his promise to me, vanished like it meant nothing. I left without another word. When I got home, I sat on the edge of my bed for hours. My hands were shaking. I couldn't even cry. I felt powerless, like they had stolen more than just a watch. They had taken my last connection to him. 2 weeks passed. I didn't tell anyone. I didn't have the energy to fight. But then my phone rang. It was a Wednesday morning when my phone rang. I didn't recognize the number, so I let it go to voicemail. A minute later, I got a text. "Hi, this is Travis from Capital Pawn. I think I have something that belonged to your father. Please call me." I froze. My stomach flipped. I stared at the message for a long time before finally calling the number back. A man picked up on the second ring. "Capital Pawn, Travis speaking." I swallowed hard. "Hi, this is Jessica Moore. You texted me?" "Oh yes," he said quickly, like he'd been waiting. "I just wanted to double check. You're Jessica Moore, right? Daughter of Raymond Moore." "Yes," I said, my voice already starting to shake. "Why?" There was a pause, then he said gently, "I think I have something that belonged to your father. An Omega Seamaster watch. Silver, with an inscription on the back." My breath caught. "What inscription?" He hesitated, then read it aloud. "RM, always keep time for family." I felt dizzy. That was it. That was the exact phrase my dad used to say to me every night before bed when I was little. That's his. That's the one, I said, trying to steady my voice. How did you get it? Travis cleared his throat. A woman brought it in. Said her name was Kaylee. Said her stepfather passed recently, and she needed to sell a few keepsakes to help save her business. She looked really upset. Told me he would have wanted the money to go towards something meaningful. I felt like the floor had dropped beneath me. Kaylee. She sold it. She stood there and handed it over like it was nothing. I didn't even say goodbye to Travis. I just muttered, "I'll be there in 30 minutes, grabbed my keys and ran out the door. The drive felt like a blur. I barely remember the streets, just the way my fingers gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles went white. At every red light, I replayed what he said. She needed the money. She said it would go towards something meaningful. What could be more meaningful than my father's only daughter getting the one thing he promised her? When I pulled into the parking lot of Capitol Pawn, I didn't even turn off the engine at first. I just sat there, staring through the windshield. My eyes burned. She had sold my father's memory. She had taken the one thing that meant anything to me and traded it for cash. I took a deep breath, stepped out of the car, and walked toward the door. I was going to get that watch back, no matter what it took. When I walked into the pawn shop, a little bell jingled above the door. The place smelled like old wood and metal, dusty, cramped, and quiet. A man behind the counter looked up from a small box of tools. "You must be Jessica," he said. He had kind eyes, maybe late 40s, with a beard that made him look a little older. "I'm Travis." I nodded, barely able to speak. He reached under the counter, pulled out a small black box, and placed it gently in front of me. "I've been holding it ever since I got your text," he said. Didn't feel right putting it back in the case. I opened it slowly. There it was, my dad's watch. The silver band still scratched along the edges, just like I remembered. The second hand ticking softly like it never stopped. I flipped it over and read the engraving. RM. Always keep time for family. My eyes filled up. I blinked fast, trying not to cry right there in the store, but it was no use. I just stood there, tears slipping down my cheeks, holding the one piece of him I thought I'd lost forever. "I'm really sorry about your loss," Travis said quietly. "Your dad must have meant a lot to you." "He was everything," I whispered. He nodded, then sighed. "So here's the thing. I can't just give it to you. She got $450 for it. Unless you file a police report and prove it was stolen, I can't legally hand it over for free." I looked at him. My heart sank. "You mean I have to buy back my own father's watch?" He looked a little guilty. "I don't like it either, but it's the law." I thought about calling the police, but I didn't want them involved. Not yet. Not like this. I pulled out my debit card. "I'll pay." He didn't argue. As he rang it up, he said, "She told me she needed the money for her candle business. Said it was going under." She looked like she'd been crying for hours. I stared at the watch in the box. So this is what it came down to. She sold my father's legacy to keep her little candle shop afloat. It didn't matter how many tears she cried. She still made that choice. As I walked out of the shop, watch in hand, something inside me cracked wide open. This wasn't just about a watch anymore. This was about everything they'd taken. I didn't go home. I didn't eat. I didn't even cry this time. I drove straight to Dana's house, the watch in my bag and my phone already recording. My hands were shaking with anger the whole ride, and by the time I pulled into the driveway, I didn't care how it ended. I just needed them to hear me. Dana opened the door when I rang the bell. She looked surprised for half a second, then her face tightened. "I'm not in the mood for drama, Jessica," she said, trying to shut the door. I pushed it open with one hand and stepped inside. "Too bad. I've got plenty." Kaylee was on the couch, her laptop open in front of her. She looked up, startled. I pulled the watch out of my bag and held it up. "Recognize this?" Kaylee's face turned red immediately. Dana crossed her arms. "You broke into the house?" "No," I said coldly. "I bought it back from the pawn shop. For $450. The shop you sold it to." Kaylee looked down at her hands. Dana didn't flinch. "That watch belonged to my father," I said, voice rising. "He promised it to me when I was 13. You had no right." Dana scoffed. "You were never really his family after he met us. You clung to him like a lost puppy, but we were the ones here in the end. That watch should have gone to someone who needed it." I stared at her. "You mean Kaylee? For her candle business? That's what he would have wanted." Kaylee finally spoke up. "I didn't think it'd be a big deal. I thought you wouldn't even notice it was gone. I needed the money. The business was drowning." I stepped closer, furious now. "He gave it to me. That was the last thing I had of him. You went into my room, took it, and sold it like it was just some old junk." Kaylee's voice cracked. "I thought it would help. I thought he'd understand. He'd be disgusted," I snapped. "He always saw through the both of you." Dana laughed, cold and sharp. "It's just a watch, Jessica. You act like we burned down a church." I stared at her. My hands were trembling, but I held my ground. You think it's just a watch? That watch was with him in war. It was with him when he raised me alone. It was with him when he took his last breath. They didn't respond. I turned and walked out without another word. I had the recording. I had the watch. And now I had the truth. And I wasn't finished. Not yet. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on my couch with the watch in my hand, my laptop open in front of me, and a bitter kind of clarity in my chest. They thought this was over. They thought they could laugh in my face, sell my father's memory, and walk away untouched. They were wrong. I started with Kaylee's business, Willow and Flame. I'd never paid much attention to it before. It always felt like one of those trendy little shops people pretended to like out of pity. A quick Google search proved my instincts right. Her website barely worked. Yelp reviews were a mess. Candles arrived melted. Smelled like burnt plastic. Never buying again. Owner was rude when I tried to return a defective product. Page after page of complaints. And then I found the real dirt. She had defaulted on a loan earlier that year. 10 grand. No wonder she pawned the watch. She was drowning. Curious, I looked into property records for the house. My dad's house. The one Dana had kicked me out of like I was a stranger. Turns out, 6 months before he passed, the house had been refinanced. $20,000. And it was in both their names, Dana and Raymond Moore. I knew my dad never would have done that willingly. He was careful with money. That loan, it was Dana's doing. I dug deeper into my dad's old emails. I still had access to his backup account. He had me help set it up years ago. I searched for anything related to his will. After scrolling through dozens of emails, I found one. A draft of a will he'd written but never notarized. In it, he'd left the watch to me, and a savings bond worth $5,000. He even wrote, "To Jessica, thank you for always being there when no one else was." It was dated 2 months before he got sick. 2 months before Dana had him sign papers that tied their finances together. I stared at the screen for a long time. I could go to court, maybe win something, but court would drag this out for years. I didn't want a judge to fix it. I wanted them to feel what I felt, to watch everything they clung to fall apart piece by piece. So I made a choice. No lawyers. No letters. I was going to take them down slowly, and I'd make sure it hurt. The first thing I did was look for someone who could legally dig into Kaylee's mess. I found a local firm that specialized in auditing small businesses, mostly handling disputes and claims of fraud. They weren't flashy, just a quiet office tucked behind a strip mall, but they did serious work. I called anonymously, pretending to be a concerned customer who had noticed some odd patterns in a boutique candle shop's finance. I gave them everything I had, links to public loan records, screenshots of angry customer reviews, and hints that the business might be dodging tax reporting. I never mentioned my name. I didn't have to. Once they opened the books, the mess would speak for itself. Then I got to work on the reviews. I created 3 separate burner accounts on Yelp and Google. I made the usernames sound real, subtle, nothing that screamed fake. Each one left detailed, honest experiences, pulled straight from what I'd read from actual customers. I just gave the words more weight. On one account I wrote, "Bought a lavender candle from Willow and Flame." Within an hour, my throat was sore and eyes were burning. I looked up the ingredients. None of them were listed. How is this legal? Another said, "The owner acts like she's doing you a favor just by letting you walk into her shop. Half the candles smell like bug spray." And the third, "Paid $35 for a hand-poured soy candle. Burned unevenly, left black soot everywhere." I emailed about it, no response. Total scam. Each review I posted was followed by others, some I recognized from before, others that seemed new. Either way, it worked. The ratings dropped from 4.2 to 2.9 in a matter of weeks. Kaylee's carefully crafted image of a cozy, artisanal candle shop was crumbling. I kept quiet. I waited. Then, 2 weeks later, the audit firm sent an official report to the IRS and the county business board. I knew because I'd set a Google alert on the business name. The notification came in with the headline, "Local shop under review for suspected financial misreporting." Dana must have lost it. I could picture her yelling in the kitchen, blaming Kaylee for being careless, reckless, stupid. And Kaylee? She probably cried, begged her mom to help, tried to figure out who had done this to her. But there'd be no one to blame, at least no one they could find. And me? I just sat on my couch with the watch on my wrist, sipping my tea while the empire they built on lies and greed started to fall apart. Silently, completely. It didn't take long after the audit for everything to fall apart. 2 months later, Willow and Flame shut down for good. I didn't need to ask. I saw the "closed permanently" sign on their storefront window when I drove past. The inside was dark, shelves empty. The windows had a thin layer of dust, like even the building wanted to forget it ever existed. Then I heard about the house. A former neighbor, Mrs. Landry, called me out of the blue. She was one of the few people on the street who still remembered me as a little girl, biking up and down the sidewalk. I thought you should know, she said. Dana's house is going into foreclosure. I overheard them yelling. Something about taxes, fraud. Someone reported them, I guess. They're being forced out. Her voice had that tone people use when they're sharing gossip, but trying to sound concerned. I just thanked her quietly and hung up. I didn't smile. I didn't feel proud or even satisfied. Just numb. Like there was nothing left to feel. But somewhere deep down, I knew my dad would have understood. He wouldn't have liked revenge, not really. But he would have hated what they did. He would have hated that they took what little he had left for me and treated it like garbage. One afternoon, as I sat in my apartment, flipping the watch over in my hands like I always did when my thoughts got too loud, my phone buzzed. It was a number I hadn't saved, but I recognized it instantly. Hello. I answered. Hey, it's Travis. From the pawn shop. His voice was gentle. I hope it's okay, I called. Yeah, it's fine, I said, a little surprised. I just wanted to check in, he continued. You seemed real heartbroken that day when you came in. I've thought about it a few times since. I wasn't sure what to say. No one else had really asked me that, not even my friends. I'm okay, I said quietly. Or getting there, I guess. Good, he said. Just wanted to make sure. That watch, it meant something. I could tell. Yeah, it did, I whispered, holding it a little tighter. The call didn't last long, but it stayed with me. Not because of what he said, but because it reminded me that not everyone in the world takes without asking. Some people notice. Some care. And after everything that had been stolen from me, that small kindness mattered. A few days after that call, I found myself walking back into Capital Pawn. Travis looked up from behind the counter and smiled a little when he saw me. Hey, stranger, he said, setting down a box he'd been sorting through. Didn't think I'd see you again. I wasn't planning on it, I said, managing a small smile. But I thought maybe you'd be okay with a coffee and some unfinished conversation. He motioned to a couple of chairs near the front window. Always got time for that. We sat down, and I held the watch in my hand, turning it over slowly. I didn't know where to start, so I just started. I told him everything. About my dad raising me on his own after my mom left. About how he never raised his voice, but somehow always made me feel safe. How he let me sleep on the couch next to him during thunderstorms until I was 15. How that watch was on his wrist every single day, like part of his skin. Then I told him about Dana. About Kaylee. About the lies, the pawn shop, the betrayal. How I bought the watch back like I was buying back my father's memory. And how I made sure they lost everything they stole. Travis didn't interrupt once. Just sat there listening. When I finally ran out of words, he leaned back and crossed his arm. You know, I get it. I really do. What they did was cruel. Unforgivable. I looked down at the watch. It helped, I admitted. Watching everything fall apart for them. I thought it'd fix something in me. And did it? He asked. I didn't answer right away. He leaned forward. Revenge feels good for a while. But real peace? That comes from honoring who you lost. From living in a way that would make them proud. I sat with those words for a long time. They didn't sting. They just settled in. That weekend, I went to visit my dad's grave for the first time since the funeral. I wore the watch, like armor, like a promise. It was quiet at the cemetery. A light breeze, birds in the distance. I knelt by his headstone, ran my fingers over his name. I got it back, Dad, I said softly. I kept my promise. I didn't let them erase you. The wind rustled the trees around me. It almost felt like he was there, listening. I hope you're proud, I whispered. And for the first time since he died, I didn't feel empty. Just full of something quieter, steadier. Like maybe I could finally breathe again. Life didn't magically get easier after that visit to my dad's grave, but something inside me shifted. The rage faded. The noise in my chest started to quiet down. I still wore the watch every day. It was part of me now, more than a memory, more than a reminder. It was a piece of him I carried forward, no matter where I went. A few weeks later, I pulled out a dusty folder from the back of my closet. Inside were old notes, brochures, a college essay draft, things I'd once put together when I was thinking about becoming a counselor. My dad had encouraged it back then. He used to say, "You've got the kind of heart people talk to. Don't waste that." Back then, I didn't feel strong enough. I was just a kid trying to survive a house that didn't feel like home. But now, maybe I could finally do something that mattered, something he'd be proud of. I started working on my grad school application, little by little, one section at a time. Every night after work, I sat at my kitchen table with the watch on my wrist, the quiet tick grounding me, pushing me forward. I didn't think much about Dana and Kaylee anymore. I heard through someone that they'd moved away. Last I knew, they were renting a one-bedroom apartment in another town. But I didn't dig for details. I didn't need to. They took enough from me already. They didn't get to take my future, too. One morning, after sealing my application envelope and walking it to the mailbox, I stood there for a second, fingers still touching the flap. The watch ticked on, and I said aloud, softly to no one, I did it, Dad. Then I smiled. Not a big smile. Just enough. I still miss him. I always will. But I carry him with me now, not as a wound, but as something solid. And to the people who tried to erase him from my life, I only have this to say. They sold my dad's memory like it was spare change. But I held on to it, and I made them pay. Not just for me, but for everything they stole. Do you believe Jessica made the right choice by seeking quiet justice instead of taking them to court? Or should she have fought them the legal way? I'd really love to hear your thoughts in the comments. And if you enjoy emotional stories like this, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss the next one.